Okay, let's unpack this. So many of us, myself included sometimes, really grapple with our relationship with food.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like this endless cycle, right? Trying diets, exercise plans, even those, magic pills.
Oh, yeah.
We've probably tried it all, always searching for that sense of control. But what if control isn't really the answer? Today, we're doing a deep dive into an organization that offers, well, a profoundly different path. Overeaters Anonymous, or OA.
Right.
We've actually got a really comprehensive guide right from OA itself, detailing their 12 steps and 12 traditions.
It's quite something.
So our mission today is to kind of cut through the noise, pull out the core insights, those surprising facts maybe, and the deeper philosophy behind this unique program. We want to show you how it offers a path to recovery that goes way beyond just managing weight.
And what's truly fascinating right from the start is how OA defines compulsive overeating. It's not just, a bad habit or lacking willpower, which is kind of the common idea out there.
Yeah, that's what most people think.
Exactly. Instead, they frame it as a threefold illness: physical, emotional, and spiritual. And that single reframing, it just shifts the whole discussion, away from simple self-discipline towards something much, much deeper.
A whole different ball game.
Totally. And OA explicitly states, look, there are no diets here, no scales, no magic pills. It's about a program of recovery. And it's rooted in the healing power of love that you find within the fellowship.
That's a powerful distinction right away. So, okay, let's jump into the core of OA's personal recovery journey. Starting with step 1.
Mm-hmm.
It begins with this declaration that I imagine for many is incredibly difficult to make.
Mm-hmm.
We admitted we were powerless over food, that our lives had become unmanageable.
Yeah.
I could just hear the pushback, someone thinking, powerless, no way, I just need more willpower.
Exactly. And why is that so hard to admit? The source material clarifies this isn't like a moral failing. It's about acknowledging a disease.
A disease.
Yes, one that affects you physically, emotionally, and spiritually. It suggests there's an abnormal reaction to food. So while, normal eaters get full, they lose interest, they move on.
Right.
Compulsive overeaters can feel this relentless urge, compelled to eat serving after serving of certain foods, sometimes even when they feel physically sick from it.
Wow.
So the profound insight here is, look, you're not battling a lack of willpower. You're dealing with an illness that fundamentally changes your relationship with food.
Okay, and what about that second part? Our lives have become unmanageable. Often people think, if my life looks okay on the surface, good job, family seems fine, then surely it's manageable.
Right, and the material really digs into that. It shows how even people who seem outwardly successful can have lives that are secretly profoundly unmanageable.
How so?
Well, they might be using food constantly to escape, chronic unhappiness or buried feelings, or just coping with fears, anxieties, anger, disappointments, even just boredom or putting things off.
Hiding in the food.
Exactly. It's the hidden way individuals attempted to manage every detail of life, but found themselves feeling totally demoralized, constantly hid from our pain by eating. So the insight is that unmanageability isn't always like obvious external chaos. It can be the silent internal struggle where food becomes the main destructive coping mechanism.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The text says that admitting powerlessness, far from being this negative, depressing thing, actually opened the door to an amazing newfound power.
That feels so counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It really does, but think about it like this maybe. For someone with diabetes, admitting they have it isn't a sign of weakness, right?
No, it's necessary.
It's the first step to getting daily treatment and actually regaining some control over their health. Denial, the text says flat out, leads to destruction. But honesty, that's what saves. The power isn't in controlling the illness through sheer force of will, but in accepting its nature and then seeking a different kind of solution. Okay, that reframes it. So once you've made that huge admission, where does the OA journey take you next?
It takes a kind of surprising turn, asking you to look at your own idea of sanity in step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Now, I imagine many listeners might initially balk at that word, sanity, thinking, wait, I'm perfectly sane, I just have an eating problem.
Right. And the material offers a really stark, almost shocking look at what insanity means in this specific context. It's not about being, clinically insane in the way we usually think of it.
Okay.
It's more about the compulsion to repeat self-destructive patterns over and over again.
Like what kind of things?
Well, the text lists things like driving miles in the middle of the night just for food, eating food that's frozen, burnt, stale, even spoiled, digging food out of the garbage, lying about eating, stealing food or money for food, eating until you're actually sick.
Wow, these are extreme. They are. And spending hundreds of dollars on weight loss schemes, trying diet drugs, clubs, spas, hypnosis, surgery, jaw wiring, fasting, purging, all these things, while the core problem just kept coming back.
So the insanity is doing the same destructive things and expecting a different result.
Exactly that. The profound insight here is that true sanity, in the context of recovery, means breaking that cycle of self-deception and, frankly, futility. Recognizing that repeating those actions, hoping for a different outcome, is, a kind of insanity.
That's a powerful way to put it. And it sounds like this insanity goes beyond just the food behaviors.
Absolutely. The source highlights how this same pattern, this out-of-balance thinking, it seeps into other parts of life, too,
Okay.
like yelling at your kids uncontrollably, being jealously possessive in relationships, living in constant fear and anxiety, shrinking your social life, hiding away, being a people pleaser to the extreme, or maybe being unable to stand up for yourself in, say, abusive situations.
Right.
The text actually calls compulsive overeaters people of extremes. Wildly excited one minute, then deeply depressed the next, seeing the world only in black and white, or even getting to a point where thinking suicide was the only way out.
Yeah.
So the core of this insanity they talk about is this disconnect from reality that prevents genuine problem solving and real well-being.
Okay, so that really redefines sanity in this context.
Yeah.
But then there's the second part, the power greater than ourselves. For someone who maybe struggles with the idea of a traditional God, how does OA handle that? That seems like a big hurdle for some.
It absolutely can be. And that's where OA's approach is, I think, incredibly inclusive and, pragmatic. It explicitly states, look, this is a spiritual program, not a religious one.
Oh, that's important.
Hugely important. Atheists, agnostics, they are absolutely welcome. For many members, this power they come to believe in is simply the shared love and the camaraderie they find right there in the OA fellowship.
So the group itself can be the higher power.
For many, yes. Or the support of a sponsor. It's not about forcing belief in a specific deity. It's more about acknowledging that some power outside of your own isolated willpower can actually help you. And the suggestion is often just to act as if such a power exists. Just try it. And often, through that action, positive changes start happening, and that experience leads to a genuine coming to believe.
So you see the results first, and then the belief kind of follows the experience.
Precisely. It's very experience-based. And interestingly, even people who do have a traditional belief in God might struggle here.
Oh, so?
Well, they might not believe God is concerned with or capable of helping with something seemingly simple, like an eating problem.
Right, like it's too trivial for God.
Exactly. So the text points to a shift in how you might pray, not asking God to magically remove the fat while you keep eating whatever you want.
Yeah, that probably doesn't work.
Right. But learning to ask other people for help and allowing God or your higher power to speak through fellow members in the group, the insight really is that we were never meant to face this disease in isolation.
Okay. Building on that newfound belief, or at least willingness to believe, step 3 is about making a pivotal decision. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. The guide humorously summarizes it as, I can't. God can, I think I'll let God. Which sounds, again, simple enough on paper. But I'm guessing it's not like flipping a switch.
Oh, absolutely not. It's anything but a light switch. While the concept is simple, putting it into practice requires adopting a totally new and unfamiliar way of thinking and acting.
Letting go.
Letting go of preconceived notions about what is right for us and really earnestly seeking guidance from that higher power. And this is also why OA isn't a diet plan,
Right, they're very clear on that.
Very clear. It gives no diet, stating weight loss is not our only goal. The core insight here is understanding that true happiness doesn't actually come from achieving some kind of perfect body, but from abstaining from the compulsive eating itself and realizing you need help for that.
So what happens after you make that decision? Is it just instant freedom from the obsession?
Well, many people do experience an initial period of complete freedom from the obsession with food. They often describe it as a miracle.
The honeymoon period.
Kind of, yeah. But the text is quick to note this reprieve doesn't last forever. The real challenge, the ongoing work, is achieving long-haul abstinence.
Okay.
And that means continually identifying certain eating behaviors or foods which tend to lead us into compulsive eating, and then relying on that higher power day by day for the willingness and the ability to live within healthy guidelines, especially when the obsession tries to creep back in.
So it's a daily recommitment.
Absolutely. It's a commitment renewed daily, sometimes moment by moment. And using the OA tools like having a plan of eating, working with a sponsor, going to meetings, those become absolutely key.
That makes sense. It's not a one-and-done decision.
Yeah.
So how does this turning over your will translate into practical daily guidance, especially for something as basic as choosing what to eat? It can't just be like vague spiritual feelings, can it?
No, not at all. It's actually quite practical. The source explains that when we give up self-will regarding food and completely turn our lives over to our higher power, we receive all kinds of guidance.
Okay, what kind of guidance?
Well, it isn't just mystical. It comes from really practical sources, like honestly looking at your past experience, what worked, what didn't, professional restrictions, maybe from a doctor or a nutritionist, good old common sense, sound nutritional guidelines, and importantly, talking things through with your sponsor. And then there's also intuition, which the text describes beautifully as God's direct line into our minds and hearts. The powerful insight is that by consciously letting go of that tight grip of individual control, a more holistic, more trustworthy guidance system actually emerges. And this often leads to what they call the miracle of sanity, where that desperate yearning for harmful eating patterns gets replaced by a genuine preference for foods that are actually good for you.
That's a pretty profound shift. Okay, so from turning over our will, we then move into what sounds like a deeply personal and probably pretty challenging process. Step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. This sounds like way more than just a quick glance in the mirror.
Oh, it definitely is. It's described in the text as one of the most loving things we ever did for ourselves.
Loving. That's surprising for something called a moral inventory.
Right. But it's because it leads directly to emotional healing. It's about finally confronting those secret feelings of shame and that heavy, unresolved guilt that people carry around, often for years. It allows individuals to begin cleaning up the messes of the past so we could start life over afresh. The core insight is that this fearless self-examination, and they stress doing it in writing.
Why writing?
Because writing it down helps you really examine the feelings that went with our actions, and it reveals patterns of negative thinking and self-destructive behavior that you might otherwise miss. It makes it concrete.
I see.
And it's essential for continued transformation. It helps break that bondage to self that so often fuels compulsive eating, allowing past problems to finally lose their power. It really calls for fearless and searching honesty, challenging years of maybe self-deception, whether it was about food or other life issues. And importantly, it encourages a balanced view, looking at positive traits too.
Okay, so after that really intense self-reflection in step 4, step 5 brings us out of isolation. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. That sounds like a huge moment of connection.
It absolutely is. The text points out that many compulsive overeaters have felt profoundly isolated their whole lives, even if they seemed outgoing or acted like the clown. Deep down, they felt alone.
Right.
Step 5 is described as a decisive positive action to end that isolation. And the insight here is the miracle that happens when another human being knows us truly and fully, yet accepts us anyway.
Unconditional acceptance.
Exactly. And that leads to profound self-forgiveness and the ability to start trusting again. It's humbling, yes, but the text emphasizes it's not humiliating. It just reveals that we are neither above nor below the rest of the human race. We're just human.
And what if, during this process, some really deep-seated trauma comes up, like abuse or neglect?
That's a really important point. The text absolutely acknowledges that old traumas, being abandoned, abused, sexually molested, things like that, may indeed surface during this inventory and sharing process.
So what then?
In those cases, the guidance suggests that professional therapy, in addition to OA, can be really beneficial. But, and this is key, the text also maintains that therapy alone doesn't usually provide the permanent solution specifically for the eating problems. It suggests that continued involvement with the 12 steps and OA for continued abstinence and recovery is still needed. So it's about integration, not seeing therapy as a substitute for the program.
Got it. So, having uncovered and admitted these character defects, we move to step 6. We're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Now, this one sounds like maybe the easiest step of all. Just ask God to take them away, right?
And that's exactly where the surprise comes in. The source material actually reveals this is often considered one of the most difficult of the 12 steps.
Really? Right.
The challenge isn't just saying the words, okay, I'm entirely ready. It's about truly being entirely ready deep down. And the core resistance often stems from a profound fear.
Fear of what?
Fear of change, basically. Fear of being less interesting without your familiar flaws. Fear of the unknown, like, we've never known how to cope with life any other way. And sometimes, let's be honest, some character defects can actually feel kind of enjoyable.
Enjoyable. Like what?
Well, the text gives examples like the rush of excitement from telling a lie and getting away with it, or getting a charge out of having a fight, or throwing a temper tantrum.
Ah, okay. The payoff.
Exactly. There's often a hidden payoff. So the insight here is that we often cling to our defects because they serve some hidden purpose or offer a kind of perverse comfort even while they're harming us. And this clinging, this rationalizing like, oh, nobody expects us to be perfect, that actually delays our recovery.
So it's not really about our ability to remove the defects ourselves, but our willingness to truly let them go.
Precisely. The text states a key truth. We are powerless over each of our defects of character, just as we are powerless over the food. We can't just muscle them out of existence on our own.
So what's our part then?
Our job, our part, is to firmly turn our backs on the old self-destructive behaviors and make every effort to live by the principles we're learning. But the actual removal of the defect, that's up to our higher power, working on, God's timetable, not ours.
Okay.
It's often about hitting bottom with each specific defect, just like people hit bottom with the eating itself, finally recognizing deep down that this defect is costing us more than they're giving us.
That makes sense. So with that readiness hopefully established, step 7 is a humble request. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. But what does humility really mean here? It's a word that's often misunderstood, maybe seen as being weak or putting yourself down.
You're absolutely right. Many people confuse humility with humiliation or just having low self-esteem, but OA clarifies it very differently. It's defined as simply an awareness of who we really are today and a willingness to become all that we can be.
So realistic self-assessment plus willingness to grow.
Exactly. It marks the end of that kind of constant self-absorption and status seeking. It places us on an equal footing with our fellow beings and in harmony with God. And the text specifically warns against asking to be made better than other people. That's just self-righteousness, a step backward.
Right.
Instead, the goal is to become more useful instruments of our higher power, to be of service. That's the profound insight of humility here. It's not about being less than, it's about being rightly sized and open to growth and service.
That reframes it beautifully. Does it mean, though, once you ask and a defect seems to be removed, it's just gone forever? Poof.
Not necessarily, no. Humility also means accepting that a shortcoming might not be removed immediately, or it might even return later on. True humility carries acceptance, saying essentially, okay, I am this way right now, and only with your help can I change. It's not about feeling smug or superior when a defect is lifted, but feeling genuinely relieved and grateful, recognizing it as a miracle, as evidence of God's healing love. The practice involves taking your written inventory from step 4, naming each shortcoming specifically, and asking God to remove it whenever and however God wants.
While still doing your part.
Yes, while still being willing to take actions like visualizing new, healthier behaviors and actively practicing them daily. Even knowing that, sometimes we'll be caught off guard and fall back into the defective patterns, it's a continuous process of asking, acting, and accepting.
Okay. So having done all this internal work on our defects, we now turn outward again towards our relationships. Step 8 is, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. This feels like where the recovery really starts impacting our connections with others in a very tangible way.
It's a huge turning point, absolutely. Compulsive overeating, as we've said, often leads to isolation and really defective ways of dealing with others. So this step directly addresses the pain caused in those relationships.
And here's a startling insight from the text. It says, our own name belongs somewhere near the top of our 8th step list.
Because of the harm we've done to ourselves.
Exactly. Because of all the self-harm involved in compulsive eating. But the primary focus is listing everyone we can remember having harmed, even people who might have hurt us first.
Why include them?
Because the purpose here isn't about judging who was right or wrong. It's about us learning attitudes of mercy and forgiveness for ourselves by cleaning up our side of the street regardless of what they did.
Okay.
Now that second part of the step, becoming willing to make amends, that's often described as frightening and humiliating. especially if you spent years running away from uncomfortable situations and hiding in food.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So forgiveness towards others becomes really key here. Right. The sponsor's guidance is, again, vital. And yes, the practice of forgiveness towards those who harmed us is crucial. Because, as the text points out, we will find it impossible to make sincere amends to them for our side of the conflicts if we're still holding on to resentment. Makes sense. You can't genuinely apologize if you're still blaming them entirely.
Exactly. So writing out grievances, really setting down our grievances in black and white to see their limits, and using prayer are suggested as tools to help achieve this forgiveness, even for really devastating wrongs. It's about clearing your own emotional baggage first.
Okay, so with that willingness hopefully cultivated in step 8, step 9 is the action step. Make direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. This is where the transformation becomes really visible, isn't it? Where theory hits the road.
It really is. And this step is often described as the most surprising.
Surprising how?
Because despite the fear and dread people often feel beforehand, actually making the amends paradoxically frees them from the shackles of past mistakes. It mends relationships, washes away ill will, often in ways they never expected.
Wow.
But it requires common sense and definitely consulting with a sponsor to make sure that making the amend won't cause further harm to the person or maybe innocent third parties, that except when to do so would injure part is critical.
Right. So what does making an amend actually involve? Just saying sorry.
It's more than just saying sorry, though that's part of it. It generally involves acknowledging the specific harm you caused, offering a sincere apology, making appropriate restitution if needed, like paying back money, and really importantly, changing your future behavior. That's what the text calls living amends.
The ongoing change.
Yes, and often that living amend, that consistent change in behavior over time, is not nearly so important as the initial words spoken. It's about replacing, say, years of secret jealousy or hatred with 5 years of open acceptance, respect, and love. That's the tangible proof. There are also times when amends might need to be anonymous to avoid hurting others, but importantly, not just to avoid your own personal embarrassment or financial cost.
Okay. So having cleared away a lot of the wreckage of the past through step 9, step 10 is about keeping things clean. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admit it. It sounds like ongoing maintenance, daily vigilance.
It's more than just vigilance. It's about building and maintaining a whole new way of living. The text has this great line: repetition is the only form of permanence that nature can achieve.
I like that.
Yeah. So step 10 calls for daily practice of the core concepts from steps 4 through 9. It's about helping you identify and remove from our path today's stumbling blocks. Things like pride, fear, anger, self-pity, greed as they pop up during the day.
So it's not a one-time spring cleaning?
Definitely not. It's an ongoing process of self-awareness and self-correction. This can be done through quick spot check inventories right when you feel yourself getting off track, or maybe a more leisurely and careful analysis at the end of the day, looking back over the past 24 hours.
How do people do that review?
It can be written or mental, maybe reviewing major events, doing a kind of balance sheet of feelings, or even going through a list of character defects and their positive opposites. The key is promptly admitting errors when you see them, making amends quickly if needed, talking it over with a sponsor, and continually turning those defects over to your higher power. It cultivates what the text calls a sane and satisfying way of life that brings permanent recovery one day at a time.
Moving towards the end of the steps now, step 11, we seek a deeper spiritual connection. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. This feels like the engine that powers the whole recovery process.
It really is presented as the engine, yeah. This step is about actively working to improve that personal relationship with your higher power. And the primary tools are setting aside regular, daily, undisturbed time for prayer, which is seen as talking with your higher power, and meditation, which is more about stilling the mind and opening yourself up to receive guidance or influence.
Does it prescribe specific ways to pray or meditate?
No, not at all. It's very clear that this isn't meant to interfere with anyone's traditional religious practices, nor does it require you to adopt any specific one. The text gives a lot of freedom in how to pray, suggesting you just speak in our own words, much as we might talk with our best friend, without any fear of saying the wrong thing.
Okay.
But the really crucial insight here is the focus of the prayer. Praying only for knowledge of God's will for you and the power to carry that out. Not praying for specific outcomes or personal desires, but asking for your will to be brought into harmony with your higher power's will.
That's a big shift from asking for stuff.
Huge shift. And how does meditation fit into this?
Well, meditation is presented as offering much-needed practice in the art of sitting still and opening our hearts to receive spiritual nourishment. It becomes a way to stop running and to relax without eating, effectively replacing that kind of sedative effect that compulsive eating often provides, finding calm without food.
Exactly. And recognizing God's will doesn't always mean hearing audible words or getting a lightning bolt idea. It might come as a new idea or concept, maybe a subtle change in our motives or attitudes, or just a feeling of renewed energy or peace about a situation. The effect feeling saner or more loving afterwards is often the key indicator that you're connecting.
How do you know if it's really guidance, not just your own wishful thinking?
That's where sponsors and experienced OA members can be really helpful, helping you discern the guidance. Sometimes the suggestion is simply to pray about it, asking God to increase our desire to take the action if we're supposed to take it, or decrease our desire if we're not supposed to take it, and then just wait and see what happens. It's a process of learning to listen internally.
Okay. And finally, we arrive at the last step, step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to compulsive overeaters and to practice these principles in all our affairs. This sounds like both the culmination and the ongoing mission.
It really is both. The spiritual awakening isn't necessarily a single dramatic event, though it can be. It's more broadly defined by that decision to trust a higher power, which then leads to miraculous physical, emotional, and spiritual healing.
So what does that look like practically?
It means things like no longer being terrified of food, having the obsession genuinely lifted, and discovering new, positive ways of coping with life instead of turning to food. But the text is also very clear. Even after achieving health and working through all the steps, we still haven't arrived. Recovery is presented as a lifelong journey.
Right.
And here's perhaps the most crucial insight of Step 12. Most of us who've worked this program will be unable to keep the recovery we have unless we share our experience, strength, and hope with others.
So giving it away to keep it.
Exactly. Service isn't just a nice thing to do if you have time. It's presented as a non-negotiable part of maintaining your own recovery. People find the greatest joy of recovery through this sharing, through carrying the message.
So the spiritual awakening isn't just a personal state. It's something that fuels giving back.
Precisely. Service in OA is described as a surprisingly powerful factor. Simple actions, hugs, phone calls, just offering encouragement to a newcomer. These things have come back to us tenfold when we ourselves are struggling. And when speaking about OA to others, the text advises focusing on your own OA experience and on the 12 steps, which are the basis of recovery for all of us, rather than getting sidetracked into discussing outside therapies or other fellowships. Keep the message focused on OA's solution.
And practicing the principles in all affairs.
Yes, that's the final part. The principles learned throughout the steps: honesty from step 1, hope from 2, faith from 3, courage and integrity from 4 and 5, willingness from 6, humility from 7, self-discipline and love from 8 and 9, perseverance from 10, spiritual awareness from 11, and service from 12 itself. These are now meant to be practiced in all our affairs, not just around food, but in work, family, everything, guiding a whole life of spiritual growth. The ultimate truth revealed is that, in a way, we are the message when we live these principles well.
That's a powerful conclusion to the steps. But OA isn't just about individual recovery, right? There are also the 12 traditions.
Exactly. Beyond the personal journey of the steps, the OA fellowship itself thrives because of its 12 traditions. You know, initially when someone comes in, the focus is probably all on their own healing, their own steps.
Understandable.
But pretty soon you realize the importance of the group, the collective. And the traditions are essentially the guidelines designed to keep our meetings and service committees on track, functioning in such a way as to nurture the recovery of all compulsive overeaters who seek help in this fellowship. They protect the group so the group can protect the individual.
Where did these traditions come from?
They were adapted directly from Alcoholics Anonymous, and they really embody the same principles for living that are found in the steps, but applied to how the group functions together. The key insight here is that these aren't just like internal OA rules. The principles behind them can be applied effectively to all human relationships, both inside and outside OA.
Interesting.
Yeah. Understanding them is seen as vital, not just for keeping the OA lifeboat afloat, as they put it, but also for keeping individuals spiritually fit within that community context.
Okay, so let's look at a few. Tradition 1. Our common welfare should come first. Personal recovery depends upon OA unity. Now that sounds simple enough, but I imagine keeping unity among a diverse group of people, especially people dealing with intense personal issues, can be a real challenge.
Oh, it absolutely is. Remember, compulsive overeaters often lived in deep isolation before coming to OA. Recovery really begins in the group, finding that acceptance, a sense of belonging, and unity that food could never provide.
So unity is critical.
The text states very bluntly that OA unity is a matter of life and death for the fellowship and the individual's recovery. Because members come from such diverse backgrounds, unity isn't automatic, it takes conscious effort.
How does the tradition guide that effort?
It asks individuals to actively curb those impulses, to maybe jump in and insist that others are doing it all wrong, especially if their approach is different. It means respecting group guidelines, maybe like no crosstalk during shares, or keeping pitches positive and within time limits. The goal is always to resolve disagreements by considering the welfare of the group as a whole, respecting different opinions, and trying to be open to the higher power's will for the group, not just pushing your own agenda. The insight is that personal recovery literally depends on that group health.
That's a powerful lesson in prioritizing the collective good. And the source had a couple of interesting stories about this, didn't it?
It did. Two really compelling examples. One was a citywide intergroup that was apparently paralyzed by personality conflict. But an upcoming convention forced them to sit down face-to-face and find a way to work together for the common goal.
And the other?
The other was a small-town group where a longtime mainstay member and a newly transferred member had completely different philosophies about food plans and were initially quite antagonistic. But eventually, they actually ended up sponsoring each other.
Wow.
Realizing that, as the text says, unity does not mean uniformity, the core insight is that there's definitely room for more than one approach to recovery within that shared framework of unity and the steps.
Okay, moving to tradition 2. This tackles a really fundamental question. Who's in charge here? Who is the head of OA? And the answer is pretty radical. A loving God as he may express himself in our group conscience. Our leaders are but trusted servants, they do not govern. That's a very different model from, well, almost any other organization out there.
It really, really is. This tradition is specifically designed to avoid the power struggles that can tear groups apart. How? By having no powerful offices to hold, there's no CEO of OA, no presidents with governing authority.
So how does anything get done?
Instead, there's what's called a service structure. Individuals are chosen by the group conscience to perform specific services, not to govern or make rules for others. Things like, keeping track of and distributing the group's money, finding speakers for meetings, being the representative to the local intergroup, or just making sure the literature table is stocked. They serve, they don't rule.
And what exactly is this group conscience? It's not just voting.
Right. It's explicitly stated that it's not simply majority rule. It's meant to be an expression of the group unity, where members ideally try to let go of their own self-will and ego, listen respectfully to all viewpoints, even the minority ones, and collectively seem to apply OA's spiritual principles, the steps and traditions, to the question at hand. It requires listening attentively with open minds. The insight is that the collective spiritual wisdom, guided by a higher power, is the ultimate authority, not any one person or faction.
And that point about inclusivity in voting seems really important too.
Hugely important. The text notes that most OA groups do not place abstinence or other requirements on voting rights. Why? Because to exclude some from speaking or voting denies them effective membership. And that membership, that sense of belonging, is seen as essential to recovery from our disease of isolation. So even if you're struggling, even if you relapsed yesterday, your voice still matters in the group conscience.
That's quite radical.
It is. And the tradition also emphasizes rotating leadership, or rather service positions. Longtime members have experience to share but not to control. Service positions are rotated regularly. This is seen as a vital part of our personal growth in OA, keeping humility and preventing anyone from becoming entrenched. It ensures that no one person holds a particular service position too long. It fosters that sense of shared responsibility because, as they say, there is no they and them in OA, only we and us.
And the book we're discussing is actually an example of this tradition in action.
Yes. The source mentions that this very book, The 12 Steps and 12 Traditions of Overeaters Anonymous, took something like 13 years and multiple revisions, involving many heated debates across the fellowship, before it was finally approved through the group conscience of OA as a whole. It's presented as proof that a loving God, as expressed in our group conscience, could ever really get the book published. It wasn't easy, but the process worked.
Wow. Okay, tradition 3 seems wonderfully straightforward. The only requirement for OA membership is a desire to stop eating compulsively. Full stop. No other hurdles, no hoops to jump through.
It is beautifully simple and profoundly inclusive. It means exactly what it says. No person who has this desire can be barred from joining OA, regardless of your backgrounds, races, and religions, your views, values, lifestyles, age, gender, sexual orientation, and economic status. None of that matters.
No weight requirements either.
Absolutely no weight requirements of any kind, and you don't need to have had specific common experiences with the disease. Whether you binged, fasted, purged, dieted constantly, whether you've been struggling since childhood or only started in retirement, if you have the desire to stop, you belong. Even if you're not actively working the steps yet or don't have a sponsor, you can't be expelled.
What about abstinence? Do you have to be abstinent to attend?
Crucially, no. A person doesn't have to be abstinent to be welcome. The text stresses that the door never closes to a member who has returned to active compulsive eating. Many long-term stable members have histories of struggling or relapsing. Now, groups can address genuinely abusive or disruptive behavior by asking someone to leave a specific meeting, but the guidance is that most personality problems can best be dealt with on a one-to-one basis through sponsorship, not by exclusion. And OA as a whole actually has a policy statement reinforcing this. While respecting group autonomy, OA World Service actively suggests that any group choosing to have, say, a special focus or guideline should make it clear to members that this does not represent OA as a whole, because the only requirement is that desire. Anyone who says they are a member is a member. We of Overeaters Anonymous welcome all members with open arms.
That level of acceptance must be incredibly powerful for people who've felt judged elsewhere.
Absolutely. The profound insight is that this commitment ensures OA is a place where many feel, maybe for the first time, that they truly belong. They experience unconditional acceptance and often find the treasure of friendship often where we least expect it.
Okay, let's look at one more, Tradition 4, which seems to empower the individual group. Each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or OA as a whole. So freedom, but with responsibility.
Exactly. That's the balance. This tradition means that individual OA groups generally get to operate as they see fit, free from any outside influence. They can choose their own meeting places, times, formats like speaker meetings, literature study, steps focus, and local practices. They get to make their own decisions and their own mistakes without interference from any higher governing body within OA other than their own group conscience.
But there's a limit, right? The accept part.
Yes, and that's the crucial limit. The key insight is that their autonomy stops when their actions injure other OA groups or OA as a whole.
What kind of actions would do that?
Things like fundamentally not using the 12 steps and 12 traditions as the basis for their recovery program, or consistently ignoring other traditions, maybe around finances, like not being self-supporting through member contributions, or endorsing outside enterprises, or breaking the principles of anonymity at the public level, actions that would damage OA's reputation or undermine its core purpose.
And the source gives a pretty stark warning about ignoring this, using an early OA group as an example.
It does, a really cautionary tale. It talks about an early OA group that started incorporating specific practices from a local church, things like laying on hands and praying for healing during meetings.
What happened?
Well, apparently membership soared initially. It was probably very appealing. But the text says the members gradually forgot about working the steps. The focus shifted away from OA's core program. People started relapsing, and eventually the group just dwindled and disbanded completely.
Wow. So the autonomy has to serve the primary purpose.
Exactly. That experience underscored for OA that OA autonomy is essential if we are to live by our traditions and keep OA's 12-step recovery program intact. The lesson learned, the insight, is about learning to act autonomously even as we live in harmony with others. Taking responsibility for your own actions in recovery and your group's adherence to principles while also respecting the boundaries and the welfare of the wider fellowship. It's that crucial balance of freedom and shared purpose.
We have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive into Overeaters Anonymous's 12 steps and these first 4 traditions. It's really clear this is not some quick fix, definitely not a diet plan. It's presented as a profound journey of self-discovery, spiritual growth, and crucially, community. It really challenges a lot of our standard ways of thinking about control and, self-reliance.
It really does. And if we try to connect this to the bigger picture, OA's core principles, surrender, acceptance, humility, finding recovery within a shared fellowship, they offer such a powerful contrast to a world that often emphasizes, individualistic striving, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, finding quick solutions.
Hmm.
So maybe this raises an important question for you, the listener, to think about. In what areas of your own life, maybe completely unrelated to food, might a shift away from constantly striving for individual control towards embracing community support and trusting a power greater than yourself, however you happen to define that? Might that shift unlock new possibilities for healing, for growth, for just peace?
That's a great question.
Because the journey described in these steps and traditions, it really feels like it's not just for compulsive overeaters. It feels more like a potential blueprint for navigating so many of life's challenges with more humility, more integrity, and maybe finding a more profound sense of connection. A path towards being truly well in a much broader sense.